All right, welcome. Some of this you got in class on Monday. I'm going to review it anyway as we go along part of this. So you get the end part of this for networks and other things. And then we'll move on to talking about privacy. So we had mentioned telecommunications. We want to describe telecom technology and discuss how telecom affects us in society. So basic infrastructure, we have cell towers, mobile phones, digital signal versus analog signal. Pay attention to that in your reading. Frequency versus amplitude, radio frequency versus wireless frequencies, and different kinds of cables. The first set of things you may recall. Under the types of cabling, we talked about twisted pair, or I mentioned twisted pair, coaxial, and fiber optic. So here's one thing you should do. Find pictures of each type of cable on the internet, and there's a table in MindTap in your reading in the relevant section on telecommunications 2.5 that gives you definitions for each type's descriptions for each types of cable, and then watch the video, A Visual History of Telecommunications. Now, one of the things I will show you, I will tell you is when you log into MindTap, there are two views of what you see. One is the weekly view, so what's due this week. That's not terribly helpful. If you click onto the other one, it's a unit view, and the unit view shows each one of the modules. And if you click on one of those modules, it will show you each one of the sections plus a folder for training videos, and then a folder for all of the videos that are part of that section. So one of the easiest ways to find the videos that are part of the reading, especially the ones I'm mentioning here, is to go into that unit view, go into the video section, and click on the folder for videos, and you'll see them. They're also embedded in the reading, so as you're going along, you might think one of them is interesting. But the unit view gives you a way to look at the list of all the videos, so make sure you pay attention to that. So here are some questions from the reading, and these are some of the questions that you're supposed to answer. And in your video assignment page, as I described in class, you are supposed to put which video you watched and how long it is, but also responses to the questions here and anywhere else in the rest of the lesson. Well, for this one, I believe is section 2.5. You would put the answers to these questions here. So, what is the digital divide? Why is AT&T getting rid of 2-year contracts for phones? And why, in a particular story that's mentioned, why is Samsung paying Apple lots and lots of money? So, thinking about those things a little bit, I'm not going to talk about them here because I want you to answer those questions. But more about infrastructure, we have things like routers. We talked about that in a previous class. Access point, where you access the internet. Hotspot, which as we said in class was something like a phone you set up so that other devices can connect to it and through it use the internet. And then various other kinds of devices. Those other kinds of devices would be dial-up cable modem. And remember we mentioned what a modem was, modulator, demodulator, network interface card or NIC, and wireless modem. We mentioned cellular MiFi here, but we're actually going to define it a little bit later. So here are some more questions from the reading for you to ponder, not necessarily from what I'm specifically talking about here, although they're related, but for you to go in and find the answers to them. So what is the difference between signal frequency and amplitude? Okay, we talked about that a little bit in class. I want to see what you remember about that. And what is the term MiFi short for? And what is a NIC? We talked about that first question and the third question in class on Monday. So take a look and see if you can find an answer for what is MiFi short for. So CDMA, code division, multiple access. The basic procedure is that we combine all the signals into one signal for transmission. We split the signals at the receiver with a key, like an encryption key, basically. And some carriers in the United States, Sprint, Verizon, and US Cellular use CDMA. Now, it may be that Verizon has changed since this book was written. That may be worth checking. GSM stands for Global System for Mobiles. It uses time division multiple access. That is, packets from each call get routed in a specific time slot, recombined into one message by the receiver. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a minute. Time division multiple access. Packets from each call get routed a specific time slot and are recombined by the receiver on the end. So you can think of it as time slicing a message and having the receiver on the other end, grouping them back together. Much like what our internet protocols do, like TCP/IP, the ones we talked about last time. Also mentioned in class, it's easier to swap phones on a GSM network because of their acceptance policies. In particular, that you can take the SIM card out of one phone, pop it in another phone, and it has to work. That's because in the European and world markets, they mandated that to be a GSM phone, you have to accept SIM cards from any carrier. AT&T, T-Mobile, and most of the rest of the world use GSM. Some of the other carriers that we mentioned earlier do not, along with, I believe, Sprint. Sprint uses CDMA. So here are some questions from your reading again. List 3 differences between CDMA and GSM using Google search or your book if you can find them in there. Why does most of the world use GSM? And what is the next evolution of CDMA, GSM, and why? That is the next evolution, next big signal thing, or protocol thing, if you will. And last but not least, what is WiMAX? We'll talk a little bit more about that one later on in the discussion, but I'm assuming that you'll take a first cut at giving an answer to what is WiMAX. Now, so here we get to some of the things that we didn't cover last time on Monday in class. So when we talk about high-speed Wi-Fi, we're talking about protocol 802.11 in either A, B, G, N, or AD, with the latest being AD having 2 letters. So they've wrapped back around to 2 letters, gone through the entire alphabet in terms of versions of the protocol. And there are some significant dangers of using public Wi-Fi. One is that hackers may reroute messages, especially things like banking messages or personal phone calls, if you're not careful. It's always better to re-verify the carrier. And if you're walking through an airport, turn off your computer. And if you don't have security on your cell phone, turn off your cell phone or lock it up, something like that. Because hackers can grab it and pull information off of it. Okay, and in that connection, there's a video in your reading in the chapter called Dangers of Free Wi-Fi. If I were there, I would show this video in class to make sure everybody got to see it. But your job is that's one of the videos I'm going to ask you specifically to watch, and may ask you to report on later. So, Mininet 802.11.16 Mininet is designed for, well, initially designed for an entire city. They designed it pretty much for a well, brother. They designed WiMAX for cities. So if we were going to go take a look, there we go. You want to talk a little bit about Bluetooth. So here are some questions. Bluetooth, as you know, is the thing that you hook up. For example, most people use it to talk on their cell phones. We talked a little bit about it in a previous class. What is Bluetooth named after? And here is an activity. So I'm going to have you on your own find some information out about Bluetooth. Draw a diagram or find a picture showing the structure of a Bluetooth packet. Draw a diagram or find a picture showing the Bluetooth protocol. So you can use Google to do those things, and I'll maybe show you an example of that in a second. Why do you think Bluetooth is limited to 10 meters, which is about 33 feet? And why should you turn off Bluetooth if it's not in use? A couple of things that we want to talk about relative to financial infrastructure and the impact that issue that I wanted to talk about is texting for banking. In primarily third world countries. So one of the things that we need to talk about is the idea that we're surrounded by very, very sophisticated networks that let us communicate worldwide and that influence lots of things. So you see some pictures here. Here's Mozart, Ella Fitzgerald, Queen, Audrey Hepburn, and the Four Tops. Some of the things that would let us instantaneously listen to and hear that stuff. You have networks that scale from personal area networks. That's Bluetooth. You can connect up to 7 devices in one Bluetooth network. 7 networks, which is basically your body area, Bluetooth. You have local area networks, which is Ethernet. That's within a building or a limited area like that, a room or a building, something like that. You have wide area networks that would cover, for example, or LAN might cover a campus. WAN might cover a wider area of like a city or a state or a country, because you're using now satellite and microwave technology. And then you have MAN, which is a subset of that, with WiMAX, which is Municipal Area Network. That's a network that is basically run and controlled by a city. Now, for some of these, it's pretty clear that there are different protocols. For example, Personal Area Network uses Bluetooth, LAN uses Ethernet. A lot of these other things use Ethernet too, just the transmission medium is different, like satellite and microwave, to go over long distances, but they're using the same TCP/IP protocol as far as the exchanging messages between machines, just changing the signal to go over wireless versus wired, and so on. A lot of these have to do with who has control over this stuff. For example, if you're talking about a personal area network, usually that's a person. LAN would be for an organization, or maybe your IT people have control over that. Wider area networks involve control between potentially competing countries. For example, if I want to send a message from New York or Charleston to, let's say, somebody in the UK, then there is cable and all of that stuff and internet or satellite to be able to do that. But a couple of countries and organizations and things have to collaborate to and agree to allow that to happen, to make that happen. Okay, another video that I would like you to watch right at this point is the video from your reading on Bill Gates' home. That's an interesting one too. Okay, so that is kind of a quick overview of networks, some of which we talked about previously, some of which was new stuff, and we'll go from there. Next, we're going to talk about privacy, but that's in a different video.